I've been testing the new Estee Lauder Double Wear Stay in Place 24-hour concealer on my dry, almost 50-year-old under eyes with dark circles for several days now. And I wanted to do a standalone review for a few reasons because I don't always do standalone concealer reviews. So number one, this is supposedly replacing the Double Wear Stay in Place Flawless Wear Concealer that a lot of people really seemed to love. So I wanted to go over a few of those differences. And number two, Estee Lauder released the Futurist, what's the full name of this? Soft Touch Brightening Skincealer Concealer about a year ago. And since some of the coverage claims are very similar, I thought there might be some confusion as to which one might be better for you. So I thought we could go over that. And number three, I've tested hundreds of concealers now. I'm very picky about under eye products because our under eye area is so tricky to deal with as we age. I'm turning 50 this year and I have dryness, texture, under eye hollows, and dark circles. So if I can possibly provide you with helpful information to help you make better buying decisions, I want to do that, and that's what I hope to do today. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new, and let's go ahead and take a look at how this new concealer applies, what it looks like on me with and without corrector, with and without setting powder, how it wears and compares to these other products, and all the details so you can see if it will work for you. There are 30 shades of the new Estee Lauder Double Wear Stay in Place 24-hour concealer. I grabbed shade 2.5C, which is the same shade I have in Futurist. It's described as light medium with cool peachy undertones. This retails for $38 and you get 0.4 ounces in here, which is quite a lot of product when it comes to concealer. We're going to talk more about that when I get into the comparison of Futurist with Double Wear, but I'm going to go through the claims and the application, wear tests, and all of that before I get into the comparison. So this is supposed to be a multi-use concealer that you can conceal, contour, or highlight with that wears up to 24 hours. It's supposed to be skin perfecting, weightless, flexible, and breathable with medium to full coverage, and it's supposed to melt into your skin. Now they focus on what they call Invisiflex technology, that are these flexible polymers that move with your facial expressions throughout the day, and microsilica spheres that absorb sebum to provide powerful oil control immediately and for up to 24 hours. It's also supposed to hydrate on contact and blur imperfections and give a soft matte finish. And it's supposed to be 24-hour color true, non-caking, non-streaking, non-poring, and 24-hour settle and crease resistant while being water resistant, transfer resistant, and sweat and humidity resistant. So those are a lot of claims. And the Flawless Wear Concealer that it's basically replacing, I do believe, was $32, a little bit less, but you got 0.25 ounces. So you also got less product. And the claims were pretty much the same across the board, except the Flawless Wear Concealer didn't say anything about the flexible polymers or a soft focus blur finish. But everything else, all of the resistance and the 24-hour claims, the natural matte, medium buildable coverage, all of that is pretty much the same. Now the wand was a precision wand on the Flawless Wear Concealer, whereas the wand on the Double Wear Stay in Place Concealer is a 3D applicator designed to be able to use precisely how you need it, whether you're concealing, highlighting, or contouring. Now, I've tested this more than 2 days. I think it's been about a week now. I'm showing you 2 application days, one with corrector, one without, and just various clips from various days as I've been wearing it. So this first day I tested it, I tried it over my beloved Bobbi Brown under eye corrector. I wear shade Bisque. I always want to see if concealers I'm testing are compatible with products I normally wear underneath them. And because I have discoloration, I usually wear a corrector underneath. You can see the corrected side here versus my under eye not corrected here. I have a couple of bumps beneath my under eye hollow because of some kind of reaction I had to a product I was trying out. I applied it under this eye directly with the wand and blended it out with the warmth of my fingertip, which usually works great for my dry under eyes. I find that the flat edge of the applicator applicator doesn't always pick up a lot of product, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because as someone with mature, dry under eyes, I don't like to use a lot of product under my eyes. I find it can look very textured and cakey. So I get a little bit more control when applying it directly with the wand as shown here. And I think I got nice medium full coverage. And when I added a tiny bit more to the deepest part of my under eye hollow, I think it gave me smooth, flattering, nearly full coverage. After applying a small amount of corrector under the other eye, I swiped some concealer onto the back of my hand so I could test out applying it with a brush. I worked my Refer LC01 brush into the product and then blended it under my eyes and sort of out to the side as I do. The brush says it's the B05 brush, but that was the prototype. It's actually the LC01. I'll have it linked below along with everything I'm sharing today and what I'm wearing. Now, if I'm slightly going out of frame here or in any of the application clips, it's because I'm trying to get closer to my 5x magnified mirror so I can really see what's going on, especially when I'm applying them with a brush. I find with a lot of self-setting or slightly matte concealers, sometimes the bristles of a brush just don't give a smooth enough look underneath my eyes. It just doesn't fuse them with my skin the way I prefer. There are still areas that could look better. So after I blend the concealer out with a brush, I tap it in further with my brush or a sponge to fully smooth it and fuse it into my skin. It just looks less textured and dry that way. Now, if you're someone who sometimes or always lets your concealer set a little bit before blending to slightly thicken to increase the coverage, I would not do that with this concealer under your eyes or on your face because I find that this dries or sets faster than most other concealers that I have. And if I let it sit in one place for too long before blending, it starts to stick down and it can mess up my makeup at that point, and it also has a drier look to it overall. I recommend applying it, blending it out immediately, and then leaving it alone to sort of self-set. On this day, I applied it with nothing underneath using the same application techniques. On the first eye, I applied it directly with the wand and blended it out with my finger. The footage looks a little hazy on this day because of my window lighting. I didn't realize that until after the fact. Sorry about that. I'd say I got slightly over medium coverage, which isn't atypical for me not using a corrector underneath my concealer. So I layered a little bit more over the deepest part of my under eye hollows, and I would say it brought it up to almost medium full coverage. And after blending it out on the brush side, I would say I got probably solid medium coverage, and when I built it up, slightly over medium coverage, not quite medium full. And it looks nice and smooth on both sides, as it did on the day when I wore it over corrector. Notice that I'm looking up after I apply it. That's to avoid creasing under my lash line. I am very, very prone to creasing in that area and to the side of my eye and my crow's feet area. If you're not prone to creasing, this will probably be pretty self-setting for you, and you may not need to powder or use setting spray or anything at all. But if you seem to crease with every concealer, even creaseless ones like I do, once I start looking around and doing things, even after just a few minutes, it will probably happen with this concealer too. It still happens after a few minutes, but because this is so self-setting, those creases that happen, the settling in those creases, it's sort of set in and it's harder to press out with my finger or with a concealer brush. It's a lot easier when you're dealing with a creamy emollient concealer. When I try to tap those creases out or try to tap that excess product out of the creases, it messes with the coverage and with the smoothness. So if you're crease prone, my advice would be to lightly set this concealer immediately after you apply it. If you can, either with a very sheer modern translucent powder, I'll have some of my favorites down below for you, or with a setting spray, however you like to set your under eye area, or apply as little product as you can where you're most prone to creasing. We have a new puppy, so I have had some interruptions during my videos. I am going to try and pick up where I left off. So I know this is a video about under eyes, but I did want to let you know that but I have used it on my face. It also applies and blends out nicely and doesn't lift my makeup underneath, whether I'm using it to cover spots or using it to slightly highlight, and it does stay on all day. And under my eyes, no matter whether I'm using it over corrector or layering it or wearing it by itself, it feels weightless. And after it's applied, it has a soft matte finish once it sets down, which is very quickly. And it still keeps that soft matte finish once I set it with a sheer translucent powder. On the first application day I showed you, I used my beloved Pat McGrath under eye setting powder. I either use the pink shade or light, which looks white, but it's translucent. And on the second day, I used my hack with the pressed Kosas powder and Huda Beauty combination. If you haven't seen that video, I have it here and I'll have it linked down in my description box. I tested it another day without corrector and set it with the new Kosas loose powder in translucent candy. Now, I usually wear corrector underneath my concealers because I like to counterbalance the discoloration and disguise the shadows under my eyes from my under eye hollows, and it helps me layer less product but still get decent coverage. And I had done that on the day you're seeing here and set it with Pat McGrath under this eye and the new loose Kosas under the other eye throughout the day, just like all the other days, with or without corrector, and setting with sheer loose setting powder. It just gives me that nice soft matte finish. It doesn't settle or crease throughout the day. It does move with my facial expressions as the claims say it should. I haven't had any issues when my eyes have watered, which they have. Sometimes soft matte or mattifying concealers make my under eyes look or feel dry or tight as the day goes on, and they start to emphasize texture or fine lines and make me look older than I am. Nobody wants that. This feels weightless all day, and for most of the day it stays smooth and flattering with a soft matte non-drying finish as long as I prep my under eyes well, which I always do. I like to make that note because if you have dry or mature under eyes, you need to be hydrating and prepping your under eyes in your skincare routine, or you're gonna have issues with any concealer you wear, especially with a matte self-setting concealer. Now, even doing that towards the end of a long day, I can get a little bit crinkly, but for a soft matte self-setting concealer, I think this actually performs pretty nicely. Okay, Futurist Soft Touch Brightening Skincealer Concealer is also $38, just like Double Wear Stay in Place, but you get half as much. It's 0.2 ounces versus 0.4. The reason why I think you get half as much for the same amount of money is because of the skin benefiting ingredients, which can be really great for those of us that have more mature under eyes or dry under eyes. It's really nice to have those during the day too, on top of other skincare. So this has a vitamin C brightening complex, a trifirming complex, and a hyaluronic acid complex. And combined, those help bring radiance to the under eye area. They help with dark circles, with firmness, fine lines, resiliency, hydration, moisture retention, and help plump, which I'm all for. I didn't love the wand when I used it to apply this directly under my eyes. It's not so much of an issue for me anymore because I usually swipe concealers onto the back of my hand and then dip my tool or my finger into them to apply them under my eyes. I probably should do an updated under eye concealer or under eye routine. Haven't done one in a while, and I've changed my technique a little bit. If you want to see that, let me know down in the comments. I can either do just an under eye makeup routine, or I can do it from start to finish, starting with skincare. Let me know. I'll also have this review linked up in the corner and down below, along with everything I'm sharing and wearing, so you can see me apply this and see the beautiful finish. So this squatty ball applicator, I didn't love, but it does pull out a decent amount of product. And even though there is no added fragrance in either of these, there is a distinct paint smell to both of them, with Futurist being stronger. I notice it when I first open up the tube, when I first pull the wands out, but I don't notice it it once it's applied. Now, obviously, you can see my full review. I'm just going to give the nuts and bolts here so you can see the differences. This has a very creamy texture and gives medium to medium full coverage full with a corrector, and a beautiful natural radiant finish with no glimmer or shimmer added. I have to add that now because so many foundations and concealers are doing that. This looks incredibly natural, and that radiance is still visible through setting powder. Powder doesn't flatten it. Now, if you build it too much, it will crease, as most concealers will, and it wears well throughout the day. So I think we have two similar concealers in terms of coverage levels, but they're very different in terms of everything else you get. And as far as which one you should choose, or if this is going to work for you, it's going to come down to your finish preference, your skin type, and your anatomy. Now, if you want an ultra creamy, easy to work with concealer that doesn't set too quickly, so you have time to work with it, with a beautiful radiant finish and added skincare ingredients, I think Futurist Soft Touch is where you should go. I think this is fantastic for dry, dehydrated, and more mature under eyes, and it's a great option if you still want a concealer that's going to give you medium to full coverage. A lot of really hydrating concealers and radiant concealers give you medium coverage, but not much beyond that, and you can get more with this. Now, if you want something with a soft matte finish that you may not need to set, if you're powder averse and you don't like a radiant look underneath your eyes, double wear may be your preference, even if you do have mature under eyes. Overall though, I think this is probably ideal for oily to moderately dry under eyes. If you have a lot of texture and movement under your eyes as you're applying your concealers, double wear stay in place may start to set and stick down too quickly as you're applying it. So that is something to take into consideration. So those are just some things to think about. I definitely do not think that double wear stay in place is bad. I think it has a really nice soft matte finish that takes me through, a decently long day before it starts to look kind of crinkly, a little more textured than I prefer. But it is probably one of the best soft matte concealers I've tried. But if I had to choose one for my dry, maturing under eyes with dark circles, I would choose Futurist Soft Touch. I just prefer a creamy, radiant finish that still looks beautiful under a sheer translucent powder. It doesn't look like I'm wearing powder when I wear this concealer. I hope you found this review, wear test, and comparison video helpful. I have an entire under eye playlist. If you want to check those videos out, you can check them out here. If you did find this helpful, I would love it if you would give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.